Okay, so get this. We're going deep into the world of the really, really tiny.
Tiny like you wouldn't believe.
Exactly. We're talking about antibodies so small they can get into places like way beyond where normal antibodies can go.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing what these mini antibodies can do.
And you want to know the best part? They come from, well, you wouldn't expect it, camels and sharks.
Pretty cool, huh? Camels and sharks, who knew they held such potential for, like, revolutionizing medicine.
Right. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking into today, all thanks to this super fascinating article from Knowable magazine called Small Wonders, the antibodies from camels and sharks that could change medicine.
Catchy title, right?
Well, maybe not the catchiest, but the stuff in here is mind-blowing, trust me.
It really is. And it's not just about how awesome these mini antibodies are. It's also about the story of how they were discovered.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It all started back in 1989 with some biology students over in Belgium.
Belgium?
Yep, Belgium. They were working with camel blood, trying to separate the antibodies into their heavy and light chains.
You know those parts that give antibodies that classic Y shape?
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. They couldn't find any light chains.
Can you imagine? You're a student. You think you've totally messed up the experiment.
I would have freaked out. Like, oh no, the antibody's degraded. I ruined everything.
Yeah, something like that. But get this. Even with fresh camel blood, those light chains were still missing.
So were the camels just defective or something?
Nope. Turns out camels just naturally produce antibodies that only have heavy chains.
Wow. Talk about a happy accident.
Right. And then, hold on, it gets even crazier because a few years later, they found the same kind of heavy chain-only antibodies in sharks.
Sharks?
Yeah.
Seriously? Okay, so nature's just full of surprises.
Full of them. And these surprises, they're not just cool, they're incredibly useful.
That's what I'm dying to get into. Like, why are these mini antibodies, which are sometimes called nanobodies when they come from camels, such a big deal?
Well, for starters, let's talk stability. These things are stable at room temperature.
No freezing required.
No freezing required. That's a game changer when you think about, say, transporting medicines to places without reliable refrigeration.
Yeah, that's huge. It can make treatment so much more accessible.
Exactly. And then there's the shark antibodies, which can literally be boiled and still function.
Boiled? Are you serious?
Dead serious. It's mind-blowing how tough these things are.
Okay, so they're stable, they're durable, and on top of that, the article mentions they're much easier and cheaper to produce than regular antibodies.
Much easier. They can basically be mass-produced using bacteria.
Wow, that's a game changer for cost and accessibility.
Absolutely. It's like opening up a whole new world of affordable therapies.
So we've got stability, durability, and affordability. But what about their actual structure? How these mini antibodies actually work?
Well, think of it this way. They have this extra long part called the CDR3 loop that acts like a key.
A key? What do you mean?
I mean, it lets them reach into parts of molecules and tissues that normal antibodies just can't access, like they're unlocking hidden areas.
So it's like they're tiny explorers venturing into uncharted territory.
I like that. And they're not just explorers, they're super flexible explorers.
Flexible.
Oh yeah, one researcher even described them as doing like molecular yoga.
Molecular yoga.
Yep, they can twist and turn and get into those super tight spots, making them incredibly versatile.
Okay, so we've got these tiny, flexible antibodies that can unlock hidden parts of molecules. But what does that mean for, like, fighting actual diseases?
Now that's the really exciting part. Let's get into the real-world applications of these amazing molecules.
Okay, let's do it. Where do we even begin?
Well, one area where mini antibodies are already making waves is in the fight against cancer.
Cancer. But aren't regular antibodies already used for that?
They are, but mini antibodies have the potential to take things to a whole new level.
I'm all ears. How so?
Well, first of all, because they're so tiny, they can actually get deep into tissues where larger antibodies struggle to reach.
Oh, that makes sense.
And because they have a simpler structure, they're less likely to trigger those nasty side effects that some people experience with traditional antibody treatments.
So it's like more bang for your buck with fewer downsides.
Exactly. More effective, fewer side effects. That's the goal.
I like it. But how are they actually being used in the fight against cancer? What can these mini antibodies do?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different approaches being investigated. One idea is to use them as a sort of tag. You know, they attach to cancer cells and make them visible to the immune system.
So like marking the enemy for destruction.
Exactly. And another approach is to attach drugs directly to the mini antibodies.
Oh, wow. So it's like creating tiny guided missiles that deliver medicine directly to the tumor.
Precisely. And they can even be used to block those blood vessels that feed tumors, essentially cutting off their supply lines.
That's amazing. It's like having a whole microscopic army fighting cancer on multiple fronts.
And the research is already showing some promising results. There's this one team that's identified a shark antibody fragment that specifically targets a really aggressive form of lung cancer.
Wow, that's incredible. So these mini antibodies are literally saving lives.
They have the potential to, absolutely.
And it sounds like we're just getting started.
We are, but before we move on to other applications, there's one thing I wanted to mention.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Remember that FDA-approved drug called Kablivi that we talked about?
Vaguely. Remind me.
Well, it's a fantastic example of how mini antibodies are already making a real difference in people's lives.
I'm listening.
It uses nanobodies, those ones from camels, remember? And it treats a rare but serious blood clotting disorder.
So it's not directly related to cancer, but it's still using these amazing nanobodies to treat a life-threatening condition.
Precisely. And the fact that it's FDA-approved, well, that shows that this isn't just some far-off science fiction. It's happening right now.
That's so encouraging.
It really is. And speaking of things happening right now, we haven't even touched on the potential of mini antibodies to fight viruses.
Oh, right. We've got to talk about that.
We do. Let's dive into that next time. So we're back and ready to dive into the amazing world of mini antibodies and viruses.
You bet. I mean, this is cutting-edge stuff, and I'm all ears.
You picked a great time to be curious because there's a ton of really exciting research going on, especially when it comes to using these nanobodies, the ones that come from alpacas, to fight viruses.
Wait, alpacas? I thought we were talking about camels and sharks.
Well, alpacas are part of the camelid family, right? So they
Right.
produce the same unique antibodies, the heavy chain-only ones.
Ah, right.
Oh.
Okay, alpaca nanobodies.
Yeah.
Got it. So how are they being used to fight viruses?
One of the most promising areas of research is targeting that spike protein of, SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19.
Right, of course. And they're using alpaca nanobodies for this.
Yep. There's this amazing researcher, Weihong Pham, at the University of Melbourne.
Okay, and what's she doing with these nanobodies?
Her team is developing nanobodies that can actually bind to that spike protein and basically block the virus from attaching to our cells.
So it's like creating a shield around our cells, preventing the virus from even getting in.
You got it. And the early studies are pretty impressive. Some of these nanobodies have been able to, significantly reduce the amount of virus in mice.
Wow. That's super promising.
It is, but then there's the question of all the different variants that keep popping up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Can these nanobodies keep up with all those changes?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Researchers are definitely on it, and one thing they're exploring is something called nanobody cocktails.
Nanobody cocktails. Sounds interesting.
It is. It's basically combining different nanobodies that target different parts of the virus's spike protein.
So even if one part mutates, the other nanobodies can still do their job.
Exactly. Multiple lines of defense, no matter how the virus changes.
I like it. And is that all?
Oh, there's more. The article even mentions looking into different ways to deliver these nanobodies, like using mRNA technology.
Hold on. mRNA technology. Like the COVID-19 vaccines.
The very same. Instead of injecting the nanobodies directly, they would deliver the instructions for building them right to our cells.
Wow, that's some next level stuff.
It is. And one potential benefit is it could make production and distribution, way easier.
Right, because you don't need to actually make the nanobodies, just the instructions.
Exactly. And get this, they're even looking into delivering them in a pill.
A pill. Seriously. That would be amazing. But wouldn't they, get broken down in our stomachs?
That's the tricky part, right? Researchers are trying to figure out how to protect those nanobodies so they can survive that journey and still be effective.
I can only imagine how complicated that is. So we could actually have a pill that delivers these tiny virus fighters right to our gut.
That's the dream. Of course, there are still challenges, but just imagine a pill that could prevent or treat, everything from a common cold to HIV or even future pandemics.
Mind-blowing, really. This is why I love these deep dives. We get to peek into the future of medicine.
I agree. But, it's not just about fighting diseases.
Oh, right. We talked about how they can help researchers understand how our cells work.
Exactly. We touched on that earlier with the ASIC1 protein involved in pain perception, remember?
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
But it seems like that's just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Oh, for sure. Mini antibodies are becoming super popular in labs all over the world.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they're using them for everything, from figuring out the structure of proteins to mapping where they are in cells and how they interact.
So it's like having this tiny window into the world inside our cells.
Exactly. And one of the most exciting areas is using them to understand the brain.
The brain. That's always been like the final frontier.
It is, especially with that blood-brain barrier.
Oh, yeah, that's like a fortress protecting the brain, but also making it really hard to get drugs or therapies in there.
Exactly. But mini antibodies, they might be small enough to actually sneak past that barrier.
So we could use them to deliver treatments for diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
That's the hope. And not just treatments, but also to study brain function in ways we never could before, like tracking molecules in real time or how neurons communicate.
It's amazing to think that these tiny antibodies from camels and sharks could hold the key to understanding our most complex organ.
It really shows how everything is connected in nature and the power of, just being curious.
I totally agree. So with all this research going on, what does the future hold for mini antibodies?
Well, the field is exploding with new ideas. We talked about nanobody cocktails and mRNA technology, but there's also this buzz about synthetic nanobodies.
Synthetic nanobodies, what are those?
Basically, they're designed and created in the lab, not extracted from animals.
Okay. What's the big deal with that?
Well, it could be huge. For one, we could rely less on animals for antibody production.
Yeah, that makes sense. It'd be more ethical and sustainable.
Exactly. Plus, researchers can actually fine-tune their properties, making them even more effective and targeted.
So they're taking these already amazing molecules and making them even better.
Yep. And then there's the research with camelized mice.
Camelized mice. What in the world does that mean?
They've basically engineered mice to have immune systems that produce those same heavy chain-only antibodies like camels and sharks.
So they're like mini antibody factories.
In a way, yes. It lets researchers study these antibodies in a really controlled way and test new ones, see how they work with different diseases.
It sounds like a powerful tool for research.
Oh, it is. And with all these different approaches being explored, I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. It seems like the possibilities are endless.
They really do. But, it's important to remember that every new technology comes with, potential downsides.
That's true. Are there any risks with these mini antibodies?
Well, one concern is that because they're so small and good at getting into tissues, there's a slight chance they could trigger, unintended immune responses in some people.
So they could set off an alarm in the immune system, even if they're not supposed to?
Yeah, it's not common, and researchers are working on minimizing that risk, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Well, producing mini antibodies, especially from animals, can still be pretty complicated and expensive. Scaling that up to meet demand could be tricky.
Right, we talked about them being easier and cheaper to produce, but it sounds like there's still some work to do.
There is, for sure. That's why research into those synthetic nanobodies and camelized mice is so important. Those approaches could make things more affordable down the line.
So there's still work to be done, but the potential benefits seem huge.
They are, and I think this has been such a cool exploration into this world.
I agree. I'm already thinking about all the ways these mini antibodies could change things.
Me too. And you know what? We haven't even finished yet.
Wait, there's more.
Oh yeah, we've got one more part to go.
Welcome back. It's crazy to think we spent all this time talking about mini antibodies, and we're still just scratching the surface.
It really is amazing. These tiny molecules have opened up, this whole new world in medicine and research.
Yeah, we've talked about how they're fighting cancer, taking on viruses, and even helping us understand how the brain works.
And don't forget about all those new developments like, synthetic nanobodies and those camelized mice.
Right. But before we wrap things up, I think it's worth taking a minute to think of the big picture, what does this all mean in the long run? What's the future look like with these mini antibodies leading the way?
That's a great point. It's not just about the science itself. It's about how these discoveries will change things for everyone.
Exactly. How will healthcare be different once these mini antibody treatments become more common?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is more personalized medicine. Because many antibodies can target things so precisely, we can tailor treatments to each person's specific needs.
So it's not just about finding a cure for cancer, it's about finding the right cure for your cancer.
Exactly. And that level of personalization could really revolutionize healthcare.
That's exciting. But what about, accessibility? we've talked about these treatments potentially being more affordable, but how do we make sure everyone who needs them can actually get them?
That's a really important question, and it ties into, the whole issue of healthcare equity. It's not enough to just develop these amazing treatments. We need to make sure they benefit everyone, not just a select few.
Right, these advancements should help everyone, regardless of their income or background.
Absolutely. It'll take a lot of work, collaboration between researchers, policymakers, everyone really, to make sure these treatments are accessible and affordable.
It's a big challenge, but it's one we definitely need to tackle if we want these groundbreaking therapies to truly make a difference.
I agree. And it's not just healthcare. Think about all the possibilities for scientific research in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. Many antibodies are already being used to study all sorts of things, but where else could they lead us?
Imagine being able to, track molecules in real time inside a cell, or studying how different species have evolved at a molecular level.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. It's like having a whole new set of tools to explore the natural world.
It is. And with those tools comes, a responsibility to use them wisely.
Right, as we unlock more secrets and push the boundaries of science, it's important to think about the ethical implications of our discoveries.
Absolutely. With great power comes great responsibility, right? We need to approach these advancements carefully, considering both the potential benefits and the potential risks.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about mini antibodies?
I think the most important thing is to realize that we're really just at the beginning of this journey. Many antibodies have opened up this incredible world of possibilities, and we're only just starting to explore their full potential.
It's amazing to think that these tiny molecules from camels and sharks, of all things, could have such a huge impact on human health and our understanding of science.
It really speaks to the power of curiosity and how everything in nature is connected. By embracing the unexpected and exploring the unknown, we can unlock incredible secrets and find new ways to improve lives.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of mini antibodies. We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have, and we're excited to see what the future holds for this incredible field.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the wonders of science.